Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 103 of Be With Me. We're going to look at a challenging story, a very challenging question from Jesus to an invalid at a place of traditional healing, where he asks the guy who's been there for 38 years, do you want to be healed? The story is from John chapter 5. And Jesus is in Jerusalem for one of the feasts. There was a number of feasts that Jews were required to go to. So he's traveled from Galilee, from the north. He's now in the midst of his ministry time, and he's down in Jerusalem. So let's listen to the story. After this, there was a feast of the Jews. We don't know exactly which feast it was. And Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which had 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" What a question. The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me." All right, let me stop right there. So this is a story about being sick or injured. Eventually, Jesus is going to get to sin in the man. And I was thinking about the various things that we could, put in this pool, that we could, what is our handicap? What is our limitation? What is our disability? And this guy had been this way for 38 years, essentially probably all his adult life. They had relatively short lifespans at this point in history. And his problem was external. He had a disability that others could see, and maybe we have disabilities that others can see easier than we can. I was thinking about the 7 deadly sins. So take your pick, of things that we could talk about today, about problems with your zipper, or lust, or anger, or wrath, or gluttony, or problems with self-control, or murderousness and anger, or a problem with your tongue, blaspheming, coming out of your heart, greed, or sloth, or the universal pride. But here's a man who had been the way he was for 38 years. And it was no surprise to Jesus. The what part of this was known to Jesus. He knew that he was disabled and an invalid. And I was thinking about this as, if you don't know what the thing you should be bringing to Jesus is, just ask somebody. Their eyes are probably clearer than your own. Ask your spouse what problem you should be bringing to Jesus. And Jesus knows that it's been a long time. It says that he knew. He saw him there and knew it had been a long time. So the when part of this is just going to ask the who, what, where, when, why questions about this man. So first, let's start with when. When is a good time to bring something to Jesus? Maybe today is the day. And then the where part of this is Bethesda means house of mercy. And I just love that. It's one of my favorite parts of the story. Is it's not like you're going to the house of righteousness. I deserve this. Johnny Erickson Tata said something, and I don't have the quote in front of me, but she said something like, the first thing I plan to do on my restored leg, she's been an invalid for, I think, even more like 50 years. The first thing I plan to do on my restored legs when she gets to heaven is to go and bow down to a righteous Lord, or something like that. And I just love that idea. So what do you do is we pick ourselves up and march over to the city of God, Jerusalem, and then march yourself over to Bethesda, to the house of mercy. None of us approach this topic today proudly. All right, so who does this guy address? So who should we go to when we have trouble? Is it a politician or a professional athlete? Or maybe the things the world values, beauty? Let's go to the most beautiful person that you know. Or maybe the person with the most money, or the person that's been on TV. No, it's ridiculous. Real problems require real intervention, and this is in this invisible kingdom part of this. Now, I understand that we live in a fallen world, and even if you desire to get better from whatever, diabetes or some physical problem, or it may not happen, but there are things that we can do, and I think probably addressing this topic in as far as it depends on me. So rather than just saying, I'll never change, I'm always like this, or I think the ability to say, I don't want to be like this. So this invalid goes to the house of mercy, goes to the right place, probably does the right behavior. And Jesus leaves with this great question, do you want to? So I think it's a good question for us to consider is, do I want to get well? There are some secondary gain issues, and I don't want to change. And then the question is, from what? Give me eyes to see. And maybe today is the day. Maybe 38 years is enough. And where am I going to go? Certainly we're going to go to the house of mercy. And to who are we going to go? And that's where we got to fall on Jesus. And I think that the big question today, Jesus asked it, and we should think about it, is do we want to be healed? Or do we just want to say, that person will never change. He was always like that. So, Lord, maybe increase our desire to change. I think that would be where I would leave us today. That's the thought. Do you want to be healed? Let's consider and maybe answer the question, yes. Thanks for considering. I'll see you tomorrow.